Ryan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
He's ready.
Welcome back to another episode of Friends from Film School. I'm Luke Pilgrim.
I'm Brad Kennedy.
And I'm Ellis. I guess we're doing that again.
We're doing that again, and it makes sense because this is the last episode of the year. You might be listening to it at the beginning of the year. If you are, Happy New Year. It's the first episode of the year.
Happy New Year.
For
2021.
You. But for us right now, it's the last episode of the year, and we started out this podcast doing our little intros like that, and the podcast has evolved over the year, year time span, and we've learned a lot over a year.
That's what we're going to be talking about, right?
That's right. You remember doing the first episode, and I feel like we had a lot of just jitters about what to talk about or how to go into it.
We were on the other side of the room, too.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were going to talk about. We should show a clip from it.
Yeah.
We'll clap it. Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the very first episode of...
You hate to see that happen.
Let's cut, because it was just awkward going in, and we did a whole 15-20 minutes that we didn't use because we were just started talking about hiking or something. So what's up? What did you guys do this weekend?
I actually did something that I never do, and that was to go hiking
Or something, or what we did over the weekend.
Remember, it was the guy who paramotoring.
Yeah, I remember that.
He flew to Mcdonald's in his chair that had a big fan attached to it and a parachute.
That made it in the episode though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking about what didn't make it in.
Oh.
Okay. We're off to a great start.
What I would talk about with that first episode though was I remember Ellis sitting on the couch, but then we had to take a pancake from the apple box, and pancakes like a piece of wood, it's not an actual pancake for people who aren't familiar with film terms, but he had to sit on that underneath the cushion because he was too low compared to me and Luke,
which is hilarious because he's way taller than us.
Yeah,
it was really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it looked really awkward too because you're slouched down in a couch.
So was it by the second episode that we got the table?
I think so.
Second or third. I think that we did 2 episodes over there. Maybe we didn't.
Yeah, we found this table on Facebook and went to some lady's house and bought it from her.
Yeah.
And it looked a lot bigger in the picture, but it's working. We just have to sit pretty close.
Yeah. And
then we didn't know we were going to have a pandemic where we weren't supposed to sit close. That was going to happen right after we started this thing.
Yep.
Oh man.
So
talking about the pandemic, do you want to go into that?
Just sure. Episodes? Yeah, we can let's go through them. I mean, I guess that was, I feel like we got off to a great start with the podcast, and then it was that slump where the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
I wrote down a note because I felt like I experienced this in my own listening to podcasts, that you listen for a while, it might be a month or 2 or so, and then you kind of hit that slump where you not fall out of love with the podcast, but you aren't listening or watching it as consistently.
Yeah.
And I think what's super funny is that those first 2 months happened for us, and then the pandemic hit. And I think the pandemic, for a lot of people, they stopped listening to podcasts as much because they weren't on their morning commute. They weren't, doing their normal busy life. So they're at home, they have more time, but maybe not listening to podcasts as often. Mm-hmm. And I experienced that in my life as well. So I think what really happened was we hit this normal slump of podcasts where some people kind of stopped listening as often, and then eventually they come back. But what hit even worse was we're in a pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, those episodes too just were super, I felt uninspired whenever we talked.
Yeah. And that was maybe partially because just the overall mental headspace we were all in from being in a pandemic, being isolated, and having to do it through Zoom. I just felt like I couldn't communicate very well. Mm-hmm. and there was such a lag, especially with my internet. It's very slow here out in the woods. So it was hard to, sometimes I would try to talk and then someone else is already talking. I didn't realize. I'm like, oh crap. Or then it would be like, you say something kind of funny and then nobody laughs. And then it's like 2 seconds later, everyone laughs, and you're like,
you're like,
thought I just made a terrible joke or an offensive joke, or so everyone was silent. So it was hard to like really vibe, whereas in the room we can just like talk and joke around or whatever.
And I felt like it started to work when we had us back in the room, and then we would interview people, and they were on Zoom, and then you still have a little bit of that, but I think when everyone's in different spaces, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think that's just something everyone has experienced this year to some degree, is that virtually it works, but there's still those like hiccups and bumps in like the, I guess, human connection with it.
I will say kudos to us though, because we didn't stop.
That's a note I wrote. I said takeaways from 2020 podcast consistency, and that was really one of our goals, was to do a podcast every week, and we've really stuck to it.
And that was why we started it, was to be able to create content weekly was the main goal for YouTube. Our problem is what we do takes a long time to make a short film or even a commercial or whatever, but it's like we couldn't put out content every week. So that's why we started this podcast, so we could get something out every week. And you're right, we definitely have been consistent. I think during the quarantine, it was, like you said, being lack of inspiration and then no plan going in. It was sort of just like flying by the seat of our pants and what do we talk about today? And it was like, I think now that we're planning subjects and things like that, it makes it so much easier. You can do some research. And so the answer we came up with was basically guest. It was like, we'll bring guests in during the pandemic, or during the, I guess, quarantine, because it's a lot easier
bring
to
guests in during the time that you're not supposed to bring in guests.
It's a lot easier to keep like the conversation going, and it's just like if you meet somebody new, you can sit there and talk forever because you don't know everything about them yet. So there's all these questions you have, and we're bringing in film industry people for the most part, or creatives, and that seemed like a great like formula. At first,
I really enjoyed it too, because I think it was like two types of people that we kind of had met, and maybe once or twice at a film festival, or in social media. There's those people in the Atlanta film sphere that but and you've interacted a little bit, but you haven't really talked to. And then there's the people that you've worked with on set, your friends and collaborators, and but sometimes you don't know all of their story. And I think that was the really cool part, was getting to know how they got from point A to point B, their inspirations, what kind of their outlook on film and life in general. So I think there were some really awesome conversations that we had.
There was, and some inspirational moments. Like, I feel like we're definitely going to keep the guest thing going. We're coming up with just ways I think we're coming up with what our topics are. And we'll have however many episodes where it's just us, and then we'll have episodes where we bring in a guest, as opposed to it being every episode with a guest.
I think that's what you were getting to, was the point we became too dependent. And I think that's the interesting thing looking back on this whole year, our podcast. There's a lot of learning what this podcast is, and I think we're still in that process. I think you'll always be in that process, but like, we went from kind of spitballing, not really having any idea, just talking about what we've watched, or just crazy YouTube stuff, or reliving memories, and there's like really good parts in it, but it was so like, I guess, unformed. And then we moved into the talking with guests, and we became a little too reliant on that, where you almost like oversaturate it, where it's like, okay, is this what the podcast is now? Are we just interviewing people? And then that becomes difficult, because sometimes there's conversations we just want to have, and I think now we're striking that healthier balance of coming up with topics that we're researching and we're passionate about, and then balancing it out with interviews with collaborators, creatives, people in the industry.
Yeah. I meant to bring this up at the very beginning, but we have just recently hit over 1,000 streams. And that's pretty exciting. That's on just the audio side of the podcast, and that's through Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you might listen to the audio version. So thank you to everyone who's been listening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's super exciting for us. Because that was kind of in my head. I was like, I hope we break 1,000 before the end of the year, and we did. So that's super cool.
One thing we did too is before we really had our form down, we talked about anything and everything.
Yeah.
And I think we've really fine-tuned it to what the podcast was originally supposed to be about, which is filmmaking.
Yeah, and if something is like a side topic, sort of like, how does it relate to film?
Exactly, like tying it all back in.
Yeah.
I think we're getting a lot better at doing that.
Absolutely.
And I really liked having the guests because it kind of deepens your network for the people that are in the area, people that are not in the area.
Totally.
Builds you those connections. So if you need a screenwriter in the future, you need some editor, anyone, we have like these new connections that we're making, and we can hire these people or bring them on for a project. And
like we really kind of got to know some people through it
absolutely
that we didn't know.
Well, what made it for me, I remember Jordan Knoll or Noah.
Yeah, Jordan Knoll.
Jordan Knoll. He like messaged us after it, and it meant so much to him because during the pandemic and quarantine, he talked about you can't have conversations with other filmmakers like you could at a film festival,
right?
And I was like, man, we're doing something right if we're able to facilitate this, of like people getting to talk and just bounce ideas off each other and get to know each other better, and kind of facilitate that style and way of approaching these, I guess, after parties or meet and greets at film festivals, just through this podcast. I thought that was,
I like that
that
idea.
meant a ton to me.
Like film fest conversations on our show. That's a cool idea.
And it's cool because we're going to be able to have them back on in the future, and they're going to be working on bigger and better things every year, so it's going to be cool to kind of like get updated on their lives and what kind of projects they have going on.
Absolutely.
And I learned a ton too. I mean, like talking to all these filmmakers, all these questions we had about how they did certain things, we were able to ask them directly because we've watched their videos and picked through them, trying to figure it out. Another thing we learned was about when we were doing the Zoom things, it was like figuring out that they record at 25 frames per second. And we were editing our podcast at 24 frames per second. So if you listen to some of those episodes, we'll sound a little lower. Yeah, it's like it was slowing it down slightly to compensate. And when you slow the footage down, the pitch goes down with it. We're using Zoom to chat online.
Like everyone in the world, I feel like,
Yeah.
I've heard the word Zoom so many times, like probably in the last week.
So we sounded a little bit like I don't know what zombie monster thing sometimes.
I was going to say too, since you're kind of talking about editing with like the frame rate, I was going to say I think our editing's getting a lot better, just from like trying out different things. Like we started incorporating like
for the podcast,
we started incorporating audio and stuff. Like little like audio bits into the edit, instead of just doing like video overlays and stuff. We're trying out different
snippets from movies and stuff.
We're trying out different things every single time we edit one. So I think that's cool that that's constantly growing.
Yeah, I love cutting away to like the like the line from a movie, like whether it's Terminator or Home Alone or whatever.
I had a few hits a few years ago. That's why I, just polka, 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 polka. No?
I do too. I think it's really entertaining.
Speaking of Terminator, I feel like that was my favorite episode of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I liked that one a lot. It was really fun getting to research and dive into a movie, that I hadn't really watched. And
it was kind of like the first one we, I guess, researched like that too, of a film that, that's a classic. So that was cool.
To me, they all run together.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a favorite.
Well, you've edited
most
of the episodes.
Yeah.
So I feel like you've probably seen the most of them.
Yeah.
So I think it would run together, but I feel like you've probably in their entirety seen more
I've seen
than
every
us.
episode.
Yeah.
I would say
you have not seen every episode.
There's one you haven't seen.
The Utopia one.
Because you haven't seen Utopia
I refuse
yet.
until I finish to watch it.
Yeah. And when are you going to watch the show?
The break is coming up. I would say probably one of my favorites has to be, I like the interviews a lot. And just like talking to other people that work in film, more so than like the movie nights themselves.
What's your favorite interview?
That's a really hard choice. I really liked Ryan King's.
I feel bad too.
Yeah.
It's like, who's your favorite guest?
Well, it's not that. It's just the conversations that we had. I liked Ryan King. I really liked Jordan Knoll's conversation. I like Jordan Graff's conversation too a lot. It's really hard to choose. But
Yeah, I think Jordan Knoll's my favorite because I have a lot in common with him. I feel like, and he was also, he probably like waxed poetic the most of anyone about filmmaking, and I just really was into it.
I loved it.
Said she believes in magic, and I was like, magic exists, kid. Like, just because you're 8, you don't have to be like jaded and cynical already. Magic really exists, and it's just not Harry Potter. It's not in the form you think it is. Magic is 20 people coming together for 10 days and making something much bigger than any one of them could have made. And that to me is real, literal magic.
Yeah.
And that it's how exciting to be able to like essentially, work in magic.
I liked the one we haven't mentioned was a couple. I really liked Aaron Owenby's. Hers was fun, especially the murder mom joke. That cracks me up even thinking about it.
But if I'm just being like excited and then I kill someone, like nice mom, and then I'm like, then like, oh, I didn't expect it.
You let the stroller fall off.
And I'm just
It goes off the curb.
And you're like, yes.
Well, we'll get to work writing that for you right away. The nice mom who murders people.
Ready.
But
Mom.
But it's perfect.
So many things like in the stroller.
Yeah.
It's just like, you never know.
Yeah. She's
No one
got the
expects a
stroller,
mother with
pulls
a bunch of
out
weapons.
a giant knife.
They're just stashed in.
But you're killing people to protect your child,
Oh, totally.
So the audience
Totally.
will empathize.
Good mom.
Yeah.
Good mom, terrible murderer.
And Dominar, I felt like
Dominar's was really good.
kind of fanboying over their work because we had told them in the podcast, but it's absolutely true. Like, we weren't just kind of saying it to say it. Like, we would watch their music videos and go almost like frame by frame trying to see how they did visual effects. So like talking to them and kind of understanding their process.
Where when I write the treatment, it's like, don't know how we're going to do that, but we'll figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just loved that. That was a ton of fun.
That was a great episode.
We had Jason Mcdonald on. That was awesome.
Jason's was really good.
I felt like he gave so much insight into the mind of the actor, and like, we did those the myths, the acting myths with him and stuff that he could like kind of debunk or say, yeah, that's pretty spot on. That was cool.
That was like your Sean Evans moment.
I read some acting myths, and I was gonna run some of them by you.
Yeah.
Okay. One of them was working as an extra gives you the potential to be discovered on set. Is there any truth to that?
No freaking way. I mean, seriously. Yeah. I mean, anything can happen in our business. And yes, their extras do get upgraded. It happens more on commercials. But once in a blue moon, it'll happen on TV, but rarely.
I would definitely say the guest section of the podcast is probably my favorite one. And just like interviewing guests and talking to them. The movie one's pretty cool too. It's probably my second favorite like bit that we're doing.
Like what we just recently talked about, like I'd like to do more stuff like that, going through a formula, like the Hallmark formula.
It's the season of miracles.
Or like dissecting things like that and seeing why are they the way they are? How do they work?
Yeah.
What makes that movie tick, or what makes people like a certain thing, especially if it's something that maybe like Hallmark people kind of rag on or whatever. Yeah. It's like, well, why is it like this, and why are there so many people that do like it?
Like
You're like the villain from Heroes. He like opens up their brains like, well, let's see what makes you tick.
Are you gonna eat it?
Eat your brain. Claire, that's disgusting.
I didn't know what you meant for a second. Okay.
Oh man, that's funny.
We just recently learned that our fourth mic was all messed up, so we're learning every day.
Yeah.
This was just yesterday that we realized the fourth mic had this EQ set on it, and Ellis has been trying to fix stuff in the edit for the past few episodes.
If you listen to Tyler's, you'll hear
Tyler
that it's
Brown's
slightly
episode
off.
Yeah.
And that was because of that.
Yeah, the fourth mic it was a channel that we used for the laptop, like when people would call in, and that sounds crazy. It's like, it's all,
you never know what you're going to get with that.
It's kind of like tin canny already, jangly sounding. So for some reason we had this EQ on it that was extreme. I mean, like, it was cranked all the way to the bottom on the lows, all the way to the top on the mids. Like, no wonder, like, Ryan's mic, or when Tyler Brown was talking, the mic sounded insane. So we fixed that. So it's a constant learning experience here.
Another learning process was our YouTube thumbnails.
Yeah.
That was a big one. And I mean, I guess I'll swallow my pride here, is Ellis would like mention this months ago.
Oh yeah.
And be like, hey, we should change up the YouTube, thumbnails. And I was like, yeah, well, I understand and I agree, but this is working for the time being.
I almost didn't agree though. I was thinking like, well, I see these other podcasts. Yeah, I was like, I've seen other podcasts, but those are like famous podcasts,
Yeah.
And I was like, the consistency, I feel like we have like a brand, but then you just have to realize nobody cares about that. They want to, they like need to see something they want to click on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that was, he definitely was right on. And now, looking at it, the thumbnails look way cooler.
Yeah,
they're way more. They make you want to watch the episode because you see what they're talking about.
And same thing, we realized it wasn't working for social media.
Yeah,
because that's the other takeaway, was our Instagram wall, or I guess feed, was starting to look so samey for a while, and
too much text.
Yeah, and we kind of had that look, and we had been doing that with text for years. Like, we had spent so much time working on graphic design, for it, and probably putting way too much man hours into stuff that really wasn't grabbing people's attention.
Right. And I think that stuff used to work. Like, it's just times change and you got to change with them. But like when we first started out on Facebook and everything, the graphics would work. It was different, but with Instagram, it's more artistic. You have a wall where you can see everything clearly. Facebook's different. It's like the post you scroll through. But when you see everything on the wall, you're like, good Lord, like, this looks terrible. So we started doing more image heavy, where you've got like a really cool image to grab people's attention and not so much text. And I made a note too, like, the main thing is like, I want to make content that I myself would want to watch.
Yes.
That's the thing. Like, would I click on this and scroll through it? Like, especially like the behind the scenes stuff. I love that stuff. I love watching those type of videos. So if we can make those, I know that that's something that I would totally check out. And that's like a good way for us to gauge it. It's like, is this something we would actually want to look at?
Yeah. And I think it worked really well, because I think once we switched up
Ryan's yawning over here, so I'm a little distracted.
Oh man,
we've never had an audience before, so now I realize, are we just boring?
Excuse me.
No, answer the question, Ryan. Are we boring?
Are we boring you, dude?
No. I got
internship over.
I'm entranced by these thumbnails you guys got right here.
Oh, okay, so, good.
Yeah,
the thumbnails are so good they put him to sleep.
Yeah, they definitely grabbed his attention.
Yeah. Oh man, sorry. What were you saying?
No, what I was going to say, I think when we finally cracked the code of our posting about the podcast on Instagram is when we had like screenshots, which we used for the YouTube thumbnail, that you could scroll, and then at the very end it has the podcast slide, so then you have the way of looking at it.
Yes.
And I think that works so much better.
Yeah. And I think also it was like we were oversaturating our Instagram page with the podcast, and that's not all we do, you know? So it seemed like, I think to someone who might follow us, they might even unfollow or whatever, because they're just like, I'm tired of seeing this same looking thumbnail all the time of like the yellow background with these dudes on it, and they're like posting about their podcast constantly.
Yeah.
And we weren't posting. We definitely had this slump where we weren't posting anything in between.
Yes.
And that was just us getting caught up in other work and being like kind of lazy with our social media. And now we realize now we're posting every day. That's our goal.
It out too.
Yeah, we're trying to plan it out, plan it ahead,
I think we were afraid on a lot of things, like even projects that we don't put out, they're like client work, but we don't put out the final piece. But I think we're taking more of a step of going, hey, we're showing stuff of this, if it's a clip or behind the scenes of it, because you want to make sure people are aware, like, and this was something I felt like kind of struggled with for a little bit, was people were always like, oh, you do this full time? They always would think maybe sometimes it's a part-time gig or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we're here all the time doing work. So here's what we do Monday through Friday. One day we're on set, the next day we're in the we're editing on something.
I think our Instagram really shows that now compared to what it used to look like.
Yeah. Like I think posting the commercials and posting, I feel like there's docu-promo films for like a client that we thought this is not maybe something people are going to be that interested in on social media.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not, whatever. It's
and
like
then we find a way to showcase
exactly. We either post it or we post a clip from it or some cool like several cool shots pieced together and showing the slow motion shots, and then we can talk a little bit about it in the description, or we maybe we post it behind the scenes you can swipe and see behind the scenes, because to me that's like the most fun like type of post. I love seeing the shot and then seeing the behind the scenes of that exact shot, how they pulled it off, especially if it's a kind of tricky shot. But even if it's not, just seeing like the fact that the location looks maybe the location looks like crap in person, or if you're shooting over the shoulder of the camera guy, but when you look on the screen it looks incredible.
Great,
because sometimes you could be in this like corner of a room and you've made it look like a total, like you've made it look like a space that's it's not like you've made it look like some kind of like, I don't know,
like in the apology service.
Like that. You flip the room, or maybe you've made it look like a school or a prom scene or anything, and it's really just like the corner of an office building or something. And that's just like, I think that's the coolest thing, is people being able to see behind the scenes that sort of movie magic and the tricks you have to do to pull them off.
I think, like you were talking about, what wouldn't catch your attention either on YouTube or on something like Instagram or Facebook, you know, that's not being afraid to put that work out and being like, this is who we are, this is what we do. And we've grown our, I think especially Instagram fan base, a lot.
Yeah, too. For sure. And I think doing more stuff that kind of just shows people, it lets people into our everyday life, and posting things, around the office or whatever. Hey, so the power went out recently because of all the storms, and we haven't checked our freezers since then in the office. Check this out. Just a giant block of ice.
God, that's so much ice.
Tell them what we're going to do with this, Ellis.
Well, I mean, obviously we're going to cut it down into little pieces so we can use it in our drinks for ice cubes.
No, what
that's
are we?
A lie.
What are we going to do with it?
That's a lie. We're going to go film it in slow motion, shattering against the concrete.
That's one thing. Hopefully, Ryan's going to be doing some of that type of stuff. He's going to be interning for, the next like half of the year or whatever, basically. So I think it'll be cool to hopefully get more every day behind the scenes, like what's it like at Sozo Bear Films? What are we working on? Because there's interesting stuff going on all the time. It's just really hard for us to document it because we've got a deadline. We need to edit this other project,
I think it's becoming more like when we are editing or doing something cool, just making sure we screen cap it. Because I don't do that a lot. But like we're usually doing really cool effects, and we're like, dude, check out what I just did or whatever on this video.
I know.
And if we screen capped it, we could like show the shot, and then we could just like speed it up or whatever, and like have that as like when you swipe over, you see it like done super fast.
I mean, one of my favorite posts we made was when you were working on the fire effect for our upcoming short film Superman, and just showing you practicing on a plate with yourself. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I just need to record more, I guess. Yeah. It's really for me more than anything.
I'm terrible at it. Like, I'll forget, even like photoshopping stuff, like photoshopping something for a shot. I just always forget because I just go into it and start doing it. But totally, I love watching those online, when people show all the steps they took to make something. And that's what, even from like my personal page when I was doing all my Photoshop, kind of Photoshop art or whatever, that's what people really wanted to see was that process.
Exactly.
And seeing like, how did you pull this off?
Yeah. Even like when we did the spec commercial just now, when you were doing some of the editing for it, there were some really cool things you did. If we like screen cap that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why don't we let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hey guys, we just wanted to take a quick second to tell you we have launched our Patreon page. It's a place where listeners can help support the show and gain access to exclusive content.
Now for $5 a month, our Patreon members get bonus episodes like our classic movie nights, where we watch classic films and talk in depth about what we liked, what hasn't aged as well, and how they achieved some of their special effects.
You'll also get early access to episodes before they're released to the public, and we'll give you a shout out on an episode of the show as well. Now this is a growing platform, so we'll be adding all kinds of new content over time, and you can gain access to all of it exclusively at patreon.com/friends from film school.
You can follow at Sozo Bear Films on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, let's get back to the show.
Welcome back.
We're back.
We talked about the podcast. I feel like let's switch over to client work. And I think one thing we did really well this year was keeping a healthy balance of client projects and creative projects. And sometimes they come together, but
that's the best part.
And that's the best part. But I think we did a really good job this year of, managing both of those. Yeah. So what was, for one, we kind of started off the year, we had a pretty cool commercial, and we always joke about it at the office that we forget it was for 2020, but the Rose Group Super Bowl ad.
Some things are great to take care of yourself. Some things are better left to the experts. So if you're shopping for insurance, why not let the experts at the Rhodes Group take care of that for you? The Rhodes Group. Good people, great insurance agents.
Right before quarantine, we filmed it like the first few weeks of January.
Yeah.
That project got me pumped up too. Yeah. Because it was like our first big one that we did. I got to do some cool effects on it. Yeah. The edit came together really well, and I was like, this is going to be a great year.
Yeah. And it seems like a different lifetime because 2020 has been so weird. But yeah, that commercial had it was really cool because it was short. It was really like fast paced. It's about a guy who's putting up his TV by himself, and instead of like hiring an expert to help him or whatever, he puts this TV up by himself, and he sits down for the Super Bowl with his wife, and it falls right off the wall. And that was stuff we had to figure out. We sort of had an idea going in, but really it was in post that we figured it out. One cool detail that I really like is when he picks up the TV, there's a shot facing him head on. He picks it up, and it just kind of blacks out the screen. The TV covers the lens, and that's actually just a black piece of foam board, like a trifold that you would use for a science fair. It's just a black piece of foam board that he picks up. But man, it looks just like
he did a good job of making it look like it took a lot of force to pick up.
He sells it. He's like he strains. He's like picking it up. I love that because it's those little things that nobody ever would think about. Nobody would ever watch that and even give that they wouldn't think about that for a second. But we know that here's the thing, like where we filmed, there was a real TV on the wall, We had a box, like a TV box that was Brad's,
my brother's. That he had kept for a few years.
Right, that's just an empty TV box like you'd buy from the store, and we wanted it to look like this guy in this commercial cutting open a box, putting up a TV on his wall. But we only had the TV on the wall that's already installed, and then a box. So to work around that, we showed close-ups of him opening it, and then we showed him picking up the foam board, cut to him acting like he's stepping away from the screen that was just put up, and it legit looks just like he's putting the TV on the wall.
A cool little side note too is we didn't want to take the TV off the wall, so Luke had to actually like paint the TV out in Photoshop, and like he made it look like just a blank wall, and then I made a digital TV that we mounted onto the wall, and like we basically just recreated this wall, getting rid of the old TV, putting in a fake one so that we could animate it falling.
Yeah, all that's in post too. When he says digital TV we put on the wall, that's not actually a digital TV put on the wall. That's like CG, it's CGI TV screen that's put on that wall, and then he animated it falling off, and it looks very
so
real.
Yeah.
It falls so quickly that you're just like,
you wouldn't know.
No.
Yeah.
And I think several people of our like family members asked us if we broke a TV, like making that commercial.
And that's when you know you did a good job.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was really good. So aside from that project, what do you think was your favorite overall client project or personal project of the year?
Well, I think there's more that we could jump in if we can hold on to that question.
If you want to.
Like I would, even looking at our YouTube, like this was like such a easy thing, but we got pretty good response out of it, was that broomstick. Like, you know,
oh my god,
it was just an internet trend of holding up the broom, but you know, where sometimes brooms can do that because of
the bristles.
Yeah,
they'll just stand. You can do that any time of the year, but this internet trend said because of the like way the earth was lined up with the moon or sun or some crap, you could stand a broom up, but everybody was doing that, so we decided we would take it a step further.
Yeah, and have the broom start sweeping.
Yes, we did it. The broom challenge. Right now, NASA says the Earth is in a perfect tilt, so brooms will stand up by themselves. But what a lot of people don't realize is if you leave it long enough, it'll actually start to sweep by itself too. Check it out.
Dude, it's not doing anything.
Just give it a little longer. It's going to do it, I promise. Watch.
Dude, Luke, I think you're full. Oh my god.
See, dude, I told you, it's sweeping by itself.
And that was just a quick, easy me in our green screen suit.
You know what my takeaway is from that video?
What?
Green screen sucks.
I feel like we've learned that over the past couple of years. That it's like green screen is very difficult. You need so much light to make that work.
You needed everything to be well lit. You have to make sure you don't have a lot of shadows being cast on the screen.
I think it's also, and this may be something we should look into, but what we're filming at, there's settings too on the GH5 where you can shoot at a 10-bit or whatever it is. Like there might be something we could do to give us more information. I don't know, but
eliminating motion blur too is a big one.
Oh yeah, we should have a faster shutter speed.
Yeah,
and that's the thing though. I feel like we need somebody to come in and teach us how to do green screen better, because we have the hardest time.
That or John Favreau show up and give us
the wall
that they have for the Mandalorian.
LED
that would be
wall.
cool.
Like I think I've got the key down and figuring that out. It's just for some reason I guess we just don't light it well enough or something, or we don't have enough information. But
But that was a cool little funny, iPhone video we did, and it really honestly took a good bit of work for Ellis to get that to
way longer than it should have.
To get everything to cut out properly.
But some people thought it was real.
If you look at the top of the broom and you zoom in, you can tell where Brad's fingers were on the edge. It's like cut out.
I remember just trying to hold it in like the weirdest way, and
we put tape on the back and stuff to try to hold it.
It was not fun.
My nephew Jack definitely called us out on it. He was like, "Oh, did you use a green screen suit?" Because he could see where the fingers were. I was like, "Wow, okay."
I feel like too, y'all try to find every opportunity. Well, for one, when y'all bought the green screen suit, I was like out of the office.
He wasn't in town,
and then I could show back up, and they're like, "Hey, we bought this, and
you're gonna wear it.
It's fitted for you." So I was like, "Okay."
We're like, "You're the only one that can wear it," so I guess you're the guy in the green screen suit, and it's like the most like awkward suit to wear, I feel like, because for one, it's like skin tight all over your body. It's just an uncomfortable, weird thing to be wearing around your friends, and then you literally have no face and you're just a green dude running around.
The one where he's lifting the balloon, like with the black balloon.
It's so creepy,
dude. Yeah.
Well, what gets me is, and it feels so weird, is you can't zip the back up all the way. So having to ask one of them to be like, "Hey, can you zip my back up?"
I don't know how many times I've had to zip Brad up like it's his prom dress. It's so awkward. Can you zip me up? All right. Same thing for the alien costumes we have, because they're basically
the same thing,
unitard type, but they're gray, and definitely had to zip you guys up when you all are dressed like aliens as well.
What about man, like, it's crazy to think. So I feel like projects I really enjoyed would be the Change My Heart music video for the Indigo Girls, and that one was a heck of a challenge. And then also on top of it, Encounters episode 2, the dinner party was this year. The monster music video. I don't know, there was a lot.
Yeah, the Indigo Girls one was a highlight for me, I think, for sure. It was just we got to create such a cool world. It was I guess conceptually it was a pretty big undertaking. Even though we were trying to keep it all pretty contained and a fairly limited budget and all that stuff, we still had really cool like wardrobe, really cool stage set design, I should say, and then just the fact that I'm not even sure that they know that the stuff we had to do in terms of like camera tricks. I don't know if we ever even told like the Indigo Girls or Amy and them about it, but it's just crazy to think that we had to shoot around the fact that we didn't have one of our actors there on one of the days that we were filming, and the two actors are supposed to interact, and so we shot footage where we had to stand in and we basically put footage together to where it looked like they were in the same room even though they weren't. So that was a pretty big.
You also edited that entire project.
Yeah, and that's what I wrote down. I think one thing I'm really thankful for is just, Luke, your creative vision with a lot of these projects this year. Man. In that, like, you really spearheaded that one, like the editing, even kind of a lot of the overall design of it, and I think another big takeaway was just learning when revisions come up and having to change things, just rolling with the punches of it. And that was a major takeaway of that. There were a few projects where it was just, there was difficulties that came up, and every project kind of has a difficulty or two, but there were some with like even bigger setbacks than I think we were used to before. And just learning to like take a moment, like, don't let it get to you. It's just part of the process, and it goes from everything from really corporate client jobs to really creative projects, and just taking a moment to breathe and go, okay, we'll figure this out, because it always works out in the end. And you look back and you're like, man, this was so frustrating like 2 weeks ago, but now we're on the other side of it and we got it to work. And that was one thing, just last night thinking about it, I was like, the way that you kind of started piecing together how to fix, especially the Indigo Girl shoot, of figuring stuff out and reframing the narrative of it was a major
that was a huge accomplishment. That was impressive.
That's definitely the takeaway I feel like I learned this year too. Is there was multiple times where, and I think if you're a filmmaker listening to this, that's just great advice, because there was times where we're so like pulling our hair out, upset about having to change something, having to fix something. And I think a big part of it is to not treat your edit like it's so precious, because a lot of times that change that someone may be requesting or whatever actually does make it better. And it's, you always feel like you know best because you edited the thing yourself, or you wrote it, or you shot it or whatever. But
That video came out so much better than the first one.
100%. It just had so much more story and depth to it after the new footage was brought in, and you know, it's like not only with that project but other ones where we had to have changes or where we had to have reshoots. I feel like this year was a big learning curve with that, of just embrace it and you know, embrace,
because there was stuff that happened even later that I think once we got past a few of those projects, we were like, okay, this is just what it is, and we handled it so much better.
And I think the more you get bigger clients and more corporate clients, whatever, there's just always going to be those revisions, I think, you know. And then say you're working for a studio and you're making a feature major motion picture. You don't think they're going to give you notes? There's going to be a ton of notes, right? So
Hallmark's going to give you notes. We learned that
when we finally make our Hallmark movie, man.
I even get notes from you guys, and I used to argue like with some of them and be like, well, now I think that this is like better, but I've since learned that like if you just go with the notes and you just work on them, then it's probably going to end up even better than like what you had originally.
Do you feel intended. Like that is?
Yeah, I mean, I just listen to what you guys have to say now.
I mean, I feel like
try it.
That's one thing I do enjoy, like getting to show, you know, everyone in the office the edit and like having notes and, you know, getting to talk things through. I think that's,
you kind of have to
really
just try every note too. Yeah, it's even if you feel like that's probably not going to work, I'll try it and then just see, and then that way you see.
Or I like when there'd be times where one of y'all are like, oh, I tried that. Or, you know, like you said, you try it in front of them and it's like, oh, it doesn't work.
Right. And then everyone can see it doesn't work and learn from it and everything. I feel like that was something we had in film school too, where the professor would give you notes and you'd be like, you don't want to do it or something. But usually it's like, just listen to that and try it. And especially if they have more experience than you.
It's always worth a try. Give it a shot and see if it ends up being better or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think talking about switching it to encounters, like we filmed it at the end of last year, 2019, but like that's the editing process. And I think there was so much that we learned in, you know, and I'd love for y'all to speak about it because y'all were really kind of spearheading it in editing, the color correction, VFX, you know, of that.
I'm really happy. Well, this is going to sound kind of bad, but it's kind of a good thing that we had to push a night at the movies back because of the pandemic, because it gave us more time to edit the movie and like really fine tune it. And
we actually needed that time because we were going to release it several months earlier than it was released, and that we might have been ready, but we needed.
I think it would have been rushed.
Yeah, we needed that time to figure out the color and to figure out the VFX. But even in the filming process, we learned a lot with that movie because we were doing things we'd never done with, you know, bigger like cinema type cameras, and then just having to back up footage.
Oh yeah,
like
data management.
Yeah, during the shoot, and it would take like forever to back up all that footage. That was crazy, you know, because we never worked with files that big.
Having a loader and a DIT is definitely a necessity almost.
And tell people what that is if they're not familiar.
So a loader's the one that will run the cards to and from set to the DIT. The DIT is a digital imaging technician, and what they do is basically they take all the footage, back it up onto hard drives, and then they'll make dailies for the directors to come watch. You can even have them like on set so that the directors will know what they got, what they didn't got, if they need to go get anything else on set during the day. And that's a pretty crucial role.
Sometimes they'll have colorists on set too, right? They'll be like coloring the footage to see, because a lot of people may not realize when you're filming higher quality things like that, you're seeing something that looks almost like grayscale, like it's almost a black and white movie. I mean, not that bad, but it looks terrible. I mean, it's like it's just really flat. There is no contrast. Even in the dark parts of the shot, they still look kind of grayish because it's made so that you can edit everything in post and get as much out of it as possible. So it's basically all kind of really flat while you're filming. So all that has to be done afterwards. which was another weird part about filming that movie. Was I wasn't used to seeing the screen like that, so it was kind of like
hard to tell.
Yeah, I was getting used to how do you shoot this way. I mean, just recently we shot a new music video. We shot it in black and white, and it was cool because we got to shoot we just set the camera to black and white. We were like, let's go like all in instead of making it black and white later in post. We just set it to black and white as we recorded.
And that was cool.
Yeah, it was monochrome while we recorded, so we could see on screen what was working, because black and white is so different from color in terms of what you're looking for, because you want a lot of shadows and a lot of contrast. And I mean, I was hoping we would have harsh like sunlight because we were out in the woods. Usually I'd be like, oh, I really hope it's overcast because that'll look better on someone's face. But in this instance, it was like, let's get all the light.
You need the contrast.
I wanted the contrast. Yeah, we want like shadows and the lights and the darks, and you really want that instead of it being so soft and smooth.
I think people are really going to like that video. It's going to be cool.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
I just lost my train of thought. I was gonna. I was gonna talk about the color correction for encounters and stuff.
Well, part of it was working on it during quarantine.
Yes,
in separate places.
I wanted to bring that up. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay.
Good job.
Yeah, because we were trying to make a trailer for encounters that we could show on social media. So I was cutting it at my house, and then I was color correcting the log footage in Final Cut instead of doing it into DaVinci Resolve like I was going to for the actual movie.
Because eventually you did use DaVinci for the whole movie.
It just looks better for log footage.
And that was a whole learning curve, because that was a program we had never worked in.
Hardly any experience in, and so I had to teach myself from the ground up while we were doing it. But for that, when we were cutting together the trailer, I would send the clips to Luke, and he'd be like, oh, you should change this and this. I'd try. He'd be like, no, you should change this and this. And it takes forever to export, download. So eventually we just Zoom called, and I shared my screen, but it was so like freaking pixelated because of our internet connection.
And I was giving notes through this Zoom call that ended up, I didn't realize, of course, it's not true to color on the Zoom call. Like, you're not seeing like the actual, even the contrast, like the darks were not anywhere near what they actually looked like.
That's you would say like, oh, bring the shadows down more. I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah, because like on the call, it looked like it was still too bright in the darks, and I was like, what? And then he'd send it, and it would look totally different.
I was like, okay.
That was a really frustrating time.
Yeah. Oh, that was the worst. So if you're ever color correcting, don't do it over Zoom.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway from that.
Yeah. And then finally we got back in the office to finish the movie, and that was so much easier because then, I could sit there and we could talk it through and you go through, and I think he ended up doing 3 like full passes of.
Oh, I would do the entire thing like super meticulous, and then I would just scrap it because I found a better way and start over and do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the end, it made it look way better than it would have looked.
Yeah, totally.
Because comparing the final one to like the version before, I would go between the 2 shots and be like, oh, this is like night and day on how much better this one is.
And then you would export those, and then I ended up doing another pass in Final Cut of just like literally the tiniest tweaks, but it was just sort of fixing little parts where it might feel like a little too dark or whatever. And it was like these tiny little tweaks of color in Final Cut. There was so many steps to finishing that movie. The VFX were really cool.
I think you did an amazing job on this.
Fantastic.
That was a note I wrote, was just your work ethic with that. And I know with Superman, that's super VFX heavy. You have the whole,
that's probably the most
spreadsheet.
VFX heavy project that we have.
And to clarify, we just shot a short film called Superman. It's spelled SOUP, like soup, and it's every shot has VFX in it, pretty much.
I think that there's 40 something shots.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Because almost every shot has some sort of VFX in it. Because I mean, there's one guy whose head is on fire the whole time. I mean, he's like a superhero, so the top of his head's burning constantly.
What if it was just a guy in the background? His head's on fire. No one points it out.
What if a guy was just on fire the whole time?
Now, what's even crazier about that is that Fire has to move with his body. There's other things that interact with that character that the Fire's gonna have to interact with.
Right.
So
there's a lot going on, but I think just seeing your growth in VFX has been really cool, and like the amount of time and effort you put into it. You know,
totally.
Like, your worth ethic when it comes to that, or just editing, or learning. You know, the color correction process, like we were just talking about. You know, you put so much time and effort into your craft, and it really shows.
Totally.
I think a big takeaway from that is I get too meticulous. Or like too into a shot, and so I need to take a step back and have someone else look at it, because I can waste too much time trying to like make these subtle changes when it might pass for the shot, or like you guys might not even notice. So I think it's kind of learning when to kind of take a step back,
and that's been a process. I know in editing we've learned too, in that I think a big thing for this year is we've gotten way better at getting projects. I feel like we took way too long on projects that, not saying the quality is the same, but it's those really minute details that's like, is that making, if you remove that one tiny speck in the background, you spend all day, and I'm speaking to myself for like object removal, does that make the difference in this docu-promo or not?
Sometimes it does.
And sometimes
I don't want to discount it.
Exactly. And I think the lesson is you learn when it should happen and when it shouldn't.
Yeah.
So
a big part of the VFX process is just training your eye too. And it's like, I feel like you're getting better at that. And I think just overall, we're getting better at understanding how
working with it, incorporating it.
Yeah. How something should naturally feel in a scene, how it should blend. And, it's like when you're designing 3D objects, they look perfect, and the real world doesn't look perfect, and like and especially the real world captured through a camera doesn't look perfect because there's grain and there's lens flares, or there's all these different things.
The color, you need to pay attention to like how bright and overexposed the shot is, how dark are the shadows, because you don't want your shadows on your object to be darker than what's the shadows in the scene.
The flame we're talking about, that flame needs to be exposed the same as how the camera is exposed. So would part of the flame be overexposed because we're exposed for the person's face, right? Things like that. I remember the Sonic the Hedgehog stuff they talked about on probably a corridor video we watched, but the greens and the eyes, like if that green is greener than any green in
like
the movie,
trees or something,
then something's wrong, right? That feels unnatural, because you need to like match those colors to whatever's it's surrounding.
And a good way to mitigate that stuff in the future for stuff is when you're on set,
take notes.
Well, not even take notes. It's like have stuff that you can use as your reference. That's like real objects.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna make a fire scene, hopefully you're outdoors or something, but if you're exposing for fire that you're gonna make digitally, have a match or something that you can light, so
I was
you
about
can
to say,
see
you
what
probably could do a match.
I could do a match.
Or
like they'll do they'll have, you'll see on BTS footage, they'll have like a metal helmet or whatever, or a ball that they walk through with, just to see how the metal looks in that
the
location
reflections and everything. They'll have a diffuse side and a metal side, and they'll flip it around so you can see how the light's interacting with objects in the scene, so that when you create those objects and materials, you can match it perfectly. And that's how you get really realistic looking stuff.
That's cool. What about a night at the movies? I felt like that was a good thing of us learning to adapt, because that would be the other I think word that I would use for this year is a lot of adapting. We worked on projects and kind of took on editing jobs that maybe we wouldn't have usually, but I think it also made us better editors, faster editors. But with the night at the movies, we had planned this whole night. It's all in person. Pandemic happens, having to be like, okay, we're switching our plans, then we're moving back to have it in person again, and then we're like, is this the safest option? So we switched to online formula. You can still watch the entire show on YouTube, which I think is cool.
I like that a lot.
And I think it ended up being a really big success.
Yeah, we had a lot of people tune in, and I mean, definitely more people have seen that than would have seen it if we'd had it in person.
Yeah.
because just the nature of how many people can fit in a theater and how many people want to come to Dahlonega and see this thing. So there was some like perks to it as well. And also like it really pushed us. And I think all of this, doing the podcast pushed us to be able to, be better communicators, speakers, think on your feet. And then then that led us into doing a live broadcast version of our film festival where we have to be on our feet. We've got a teleprompter, but we still had to rehearse that a bunch and be like, ready to go, and it was nerve-wracking because it felt like live television or something, because it's like, all right, here we go, we're about
a bunch
to
of
be
bright lights shining at you. You can like
you can barely see
the teleprompter,
and you're reading from a teleprompter and it's moving, and I was like controlling it, so I was constantly like worried I was gonna mess up.
That's true. He had the remote down at his side and he was like moving it down,
because in rehearsal I like had accidentally gone back to the top one time, and if you hit the wrong button it'll go back to the top, so I was like, please don't hit that button.
We would have improvised on the spot. Big shout out to your brother-in-law though.
Absolutely.
Yes, Andy was a major player in that. He definitely knew how to set up what was the program, OBS or something?
Yeah, he used OBS. Which is like a broadcasting software, but he basically had this entire table set up. I don't think we would have been able to do it without him.
And we've got some pictures of that we can share, but Andy Mcdonald is his name, and he does a little social media and stuff. We can throw his Instagram up, but man, he, like, we couldn't have done the switching between cameras for sure, and just being able to broadcast it. Like, I guess we were gonna just record it initially and put it up, like maybe do a premiere of it live or something. Not live, but like a premiere of the recorded version. And he really convinced us to do it live, and it would be more fun. And he was right, because people tuned in, people sent in questions through the YouTube chat.
Yeah, and being able to do like the Zoom Q&A with the filmmakers, I think that was super awesome.
Yeah. That too. I mean, he was doing so much stuff that we didn't even know or understand, to be able to have the Zoom connected and how to go to that screen and cut back, there was a lot of...
He had a million things going on at once and just handled it all like a champ.
Right, and that's one of those things like where, and this type of thing comes up a lot, but he was doing something, but because he made it look fairly easy, you might not realize how much hard work is going into it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's the type of thing that happens a lot, I think, even with our work, things that we may be working on that someone like, for a client or whoever, they see us working on something and we turn it looks really easy. Someone may not realize, that was a lot of work to get to that point,
I think it's very easy to see something on like a movie or a show and be like, I could do that. And then you sit down and you're like, I don't know how to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. And like people understanding, if they go to our website and they're like, they look at the prices or whatever, it's like the reason they're priced that way is because of that amount of work that does go into it. You don't see all that work, but it takes a ton to get from point A to point B on those videos,
Absolutely.
Not to mention we go over with like a fine-tooth comb on everything that we make, and we are the harshest critics to each other. So we'll really
and ourselves.
And ourselves. And we'll really nitpick our work and like go through like multiple revisions before we even send it off for a client or someone to look at, and then we'll do their revisions. We'll all go through it again, and
I guess that's why it feels like personal if someone has notes, because you're like, well, we already went through all these revisions. But
there's stuff that even we miss because we're all too close and similar.
Exactly.
The other project I'd love talking about was the Monster music video. That was a ton of fun, for me especially. I got to act in it, which is
you upgraded from hand model, Brad.
I used to be the best hand model in all of the Southeast, and now I'm a bona fide actor. Find me on IMDb, Brad Kennedy. I don't think that credit's on there, but
you got Moneyball or whatever on there, so
Moneyball.
Brad and I acted in a scene from Moneyball that a student had to do when we were in film school. It's embarrassing to watch. We watched it the other day.
But yeah, that was a ton of fun. And too, like, getting to run camera with Luke doing the performance, that was fun. That was cool working through that. And again, it's like, I think one thing people don't realize is how often we use the studio space for just anything and everything.
Yeah.
You know, this Zevia spec ad that we filmed, you know, a lot of it is right here in the space. The Luke's performance, but it's like so dark and, you know, foggy that you'd never know. But
yeah,
I think it was a good breakup for that video too, because we went so heavy into like CGI and VFX from like Holler all the way through to now, that it was kind of like, I'm sure it was nice for you guys to go back to like
making
making stuff by hand,
like the shadow puppets.
Yeah,
that was a ton of fun too,
because that's kind of like getting to like stretch those like art school muscles, you know.
Art school muscles.
I love doing stuff like that. Like I hope we can do more. We've talked about some ideas, but doing anything with miniatures is always fun. And those shadow puppet things were they were kind of meticulous because some of them were really small, but they weren't like super detailed or anything. It was like they could be a little bit rough around the edges, and that was a whole new thing of just like we'd never shot anything like in shadow form only. So it was like figuring out how much light do you need kind of behind that curtain, and how close do you hold the shadow or the puppet to the screen. Sometimes we put the puppet on the other side of the screen where it's actually not the shadow anymore, but it looks like it because of the exposure of the camera and everything. And it's just like you realize, oh, it's all blurry if it's not close enough to the actual sheet, and all these little tricks you have to do to film shadow puppets. So that's like something that we would have never learned or had any reason to learn until we did this music video.
You guys did so good on those too. I don't think I would have ever been able to do that. Like make those cutouts that you did, and like just have like the mechanical ingenuity to like create like the moving arms.
Oh yeah, Brad made like the monster, and it was so cool looking. And I was glad he like I wouldn't have made the monster design like that, so it was cool he made the monster design. And then we used, what did you use? Brads, right?
Brads.
Brad used the brads, which are like little metal things where you can stick through and it'll be able,
you can kind of make a point of movement.
Kind of gives it like a joint, so then the arm could move or whatever. That was a ton of fun.
And that was cool. Gave that specific prop of the one that the monster on its knees with its hand that can move up and down. Gave that to our friend Sabrina Walker.
At Spirits Tavern.
Yeah, she wanted a piece of the music video, so she has that.
That's cool. She's also was an executive producer on
the dinner party.
Encounters the dinner party.
What any other projects y'all want to talk about?
I mean, my personal favorite so far has been Superman. For the year. I know we're not done with it yet, but
that was a ton of fun.
I really enjoyed the shoot a lot. I think the concept is hilarious, and I can't wait for it to be done. And I really enjoy the challenge of the effects that come with it, because it's a lot of stuff that I've never really done before or tried, and so it's really exciting to go into like uncharted waters and kind of attempt to make that kind of stuff, you know.
Ryan over there making noise, dude, yawning and then making noise. Ryan, what was your favorite project we did?
My favorite project was working on the music video.
Oh yeah,
I've been here a week. I've already had a bunch of cool stuff that I've done already.
Yeah,
that is
so
cool.
He did just work with us. The black and white video that I was just talking about, he helped on that one, and that was a pretty cool shoot.
Oh yeah, and the stuff we did for the Zevia commercial.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
Yeah. So these are things that we haven't released yet, but I mean, who knows? If you're listening to this in the future, they might
already be out.
If it's the end of the year podcast, I feel like the
Zevia one will be out.
That
time
one will
is
be
a
out.
construct.
And the Zevia one is literally a spec ad that we did, like, just for fun. And but we're gonna send it to Zevia, and maybe they'll dig it, because it's turned out really cool. And
it's really good.
And we got to use the probe lens, which is something we've never used. Camera speed and action, go. That was really cool. That lens is insane. I think maybe we'll do more stuff with that in 2021, hopefully.
I don't know. There's something so exciting about getting new programs or like new gear to kind of like play with and just like like a lot of people on YouTube will have like specific ways to use it. They're like, you should do this, you should do that. But there's so many other creative ways to kind of utilize that tech that you can't find a video on how to do it. You just have to kind of like do it and think of it on your own. And like, that's like the most exciting part to new gear and like new programs and stuff to me.
Totally. Yeah. Well, next time I see you guys on the show, it'll be 2021.
Wow.
So that's cool.
That is pretty neat.
I feel like we've learned a lot this year.
I do too.
Yeah, can't wait to see what 2021 brings.
Yeah.
Hopefully not another pandemic.
I know.
Pandemic 2.
This is a sequel.
I hope that doesn't actually happen.
What if it's pandemic, but it's pandas?
Oh,
attacking
perfect.
us.
Then it'd be cool.
Well, then we'd be mauled to death. That's a much higher chance of fatality.
All right, man.
Well, that's the end of year 1 of the Friends from Film School podcast.
Yeah.
Can't wait for year 2.
Yeah, looking forward to it, man. All right, guys.
Cool.
We'll see everybody next time.
Bye.
See ya.